right. So as the Joe Biden administration continues to support Israel's ongoing invasion and bombing campaign inside the Gaza Strip, there's been a significant degree of mounting a pushback, not just in the form of protests and direct actions that have taken place all around the world, but also internally within the Biden administration itself. So we had a couple updates here from Axios. They say there's been an internal State Department memo that is blasting Biden and U.S. policy on the Israel-Hamas war. So let's go ahead and read a little bit into this. I mean, obviously, this isn't the first instance of this kind of a thing that we've seen. We saw this just a couple of weeks ago here. State Department official resigns over Biden administration's handling of Israel-Hamas conflict. We also had congressional staffers staged a walkout in support of a ceasefire. Dozens and dozens of people staging a walkout over this. And now we end up with this. So they say an internal State Department dissent memo accuses President Biden of spreading misinformation on the Israel-Hamas war and alleges that Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza, according to a copy of a memo obtained by Axios. So these State Department dissent memos are actually a pretty good thing that we have. Basically, it's just the ability for lower level people within the State Department, diplomats or bureaucrats or whatever the case may be, to file these kinds of memos. They don't always get leaked to the media. This was an instance where it obviously did, but I think this is a good thing, because if you have some sort of like a rogue president or somebody like Joe Biden who is engaging in absolutely horrific policy decisions, then you do have the ability to apply pressure internally through some of these channels. So I think it's a good thing. And in terms of just like the allegations here, I mean, this is undisputable at this point, right? Spreading misinformation. Okay, I mean, I could think of just right off the top of my head, Joe Biden coming out and downplaying the amount of civilian deaths inside Gaza and saying that the numbers are totally unreliable because they're coming from the so-called Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry, which has been so reliable in previous bombing campaigns in Gaza that the UN has used their numbers and that the State Department has used their numbers, and that they have been fact-checked by other humanitarian organizations and have been virtually spot on every single time. And then he comes out and has the audacity to say, well, there's no way that we could possibly trust those numbers. I mean, that in and of itself was misinformation, in my opinion. There's a bunch of other instances that we could think of, coming out and saying that Israel is following in accordance with international law. That's an abject lie that is completely contrary to what's actually happening on the ground and the facts of what's happening right now. So that part of it is completely undisputable to me. And then the other part of the war crimes, I mean, yeah, they've been engaging in collective punishment since day one of this, okay? They've been cutting off the food, the fuel, the water, the electricity inside Gaza to over 2 million people, okay? Half of whom are children. That in and of itself is collective punishment. That's a war crime. They've been bombing hospitals. They've been bombing mosques and churches and schools and UN shelters, killing journalists that I'm going to touch on here in a second. I mean, all of that, those are war crimes, right? Now, Israel can come up with whatever justification that they want to, but it is in contrary to international law, to say the least, right? Just because they come out and they say, well, there was a Hamas member in this location, or there was a weapon in this location, or a tunnel under this location, doesn't give you permission to do indiscriminate bombing where you're massacring thousands and thousands of civilians. That's not how international law works. So yes, those are war crimes. And then that doesn't even get into the violations of international law that Israel was guilty of before this current bombing campaign, right? Go back to before October 7th and look at the expansion of the illegal settlements into the West Bank. That's a violation of international law. The siege on Gaza, going on nearly 2 decades, that's a violation of international law. I mean, the idea that this is even questionable here is completely ridiculous. But they continue, they say, the scathing 5-page memo organized by a junior diplomat who has suggested on social media that Biden's support of Israel has made him complicit in genocide in Gaza offers a rare look at the raw divisions within the Biden administration over the Israel-Hamas war. And we'll circle back around to this complicit in genocide thing here. I'll give you guys the actual definition, and then we'll compare that to what some Israeli politicians have been saying and what the Israeli military has been doing. But they say the memo, signed by 100 State Department and USAID employees, urges senior U.S. officials to reassess their policy towards Israel and demand a ceasefire in Gaza, which is like this thing that they have been tap dancing around. You guys remember, not just here in the United States, but also up in Canada, like Justin Trudeau, that clip that went viral just about a week ago or so, where he was saying, we need to push for a cease, violence needs to stop, the humanitarian pause, ceasing of the violence, and he literally just could not will himself to say the word ceasefire. It's been the same thing here in the United States. I mean, just a couple of days ago, Joe Biden literally came out, was asked point blank, would you support a ceasefire? And he says, no, there's no prospects of a ceasefire even on the horizon right now. But they say where more than 11,000 Palestinians have been killed in the war, according to, of course, they have to say here, the Gaza Hamas-controlled health ministry, which is just like, it's such a bizarre thing that the media just unanimously across the board decided to start saying it's the Gaza Hamas-controlled health ministry, as if it's like some Hamas militant who's putting out these numbers. Like, these numbers are coming from hospital administrators, from doctors, from nurses. It's the amount of people that they have counted who have come into their hospital system. And even the State Department, since this like downplaying of the Gaza Hamas-controlled health ministry, even since Biden downplayed that, the State Department has come out and said, and the UN has said this as well, the number of dead and injured is probably higher than what the Gaza Hamas-controlled health ministry is saying, because again, that's counting the amount of people who go through their hospital system, and it doesn't count the amount of people who are still stuck under the rubble. So if anything, this 11,000 number is an undercount almost certainly. But they continue saying that some of the memo's language echoes that of progressive activists in the U.S. whose anger and protests over Biden's handling of the war have rippled through the Democratic Party and created a new challenge for the president's 2024 campaign, which is another, super ironic part of all of this, is that not only are you on the morally repugnant side of this equation in this matter, but you're also not even benefiting your 2024 chances. This is absolutely tanking his chances with young people and with the Arab American community in 2024, and we've covered all of the polling data on that. But they say without offering a specific example, the memo accuses Biden of spreading misinformation in his October 10th speech supporting Israel, one of the signature addresses of his presidency. So I'm pretty sure this October 10th speech, if I'm not mistaken here, and feel free to fact check me on this, but this was 3 days after the attack, okay, and this was still when everything was still like sort of going on, and I don't even think by this point Israel had completely cleared Hamas from southern Israel, but I'm pretty sure that this is a speech where Biden said that he had personally seen evidence of the 40 beheaded babies claim that was put forward by some like random Israeli soldier and then was flung around throughout the entire US media and everything. So I'm pretty sure that's what they're referencing when they say spreading misinformation. But again, I could come up with so many other examples of them spreading misinformation throughout the entirety of this offensive. But they say the memo also said that, quote, we strongly recommend that the U.S. government advocate for the release of hostages by both Hamas and Israel, citing thousands of Palestinians being held in Israel, including those without charge in what Israel frequently calls administrative detention. And so that's a point that I've made before on this channel. You could do a hostage swap here. This is something that Hamas has floated previously over the last couple of weeks, is, okay, we'll give you back the hostages that we took on October 7th and after that, and you do a prisoner swap with us, and you release the Palestinians who are currently being held, many of whom have not been charged with a crime. I mean, this is something we've known for a long time, especially in the West Bank. You have the IDF that will just go around and arrest like random children. I saw recent videos of them going around and arresting people for social media posts, one of which was a guy who had literally just posted like, my heart cries for Gaza, okay, and they went and they arrested him for that. Okay, these are also hostages that you're keeping. Just because you did it in a like state sanctioned way doesn't mean that they're not hostages. They absolutely are. And so you could do some sort of a deal like that, but Israel doesn't want to do a deal like that. Okay, they want to continue the bombing, they want to continue the invasion, even if that means they're going to end up killing a bunch of their own hostages, Israeli hostages that are currently in Gaza. And they already have killed, according to at least Hamas, dozens and dozens of them. The last estimate that I saw was over 60 of them have been killed by Israeli bombardments, which wouldn't surprise me at all, given how widespread the bombing has been. But they finish off here, they say, those actions, which have included cutting off electricity, limiting aid, and carrying out attacks that have displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, it's more than that now, it's over 1.7 million have been displaced, quote, all constitute war crimes and or crimes against humanity under international law, 100% true, yet we have failed to reassess our posture towards Israel. We doubled down on our unwavering military assistance to the Israeli government without clear or actionable red lines. And not only that, but the Biden administration, John Kirby, came out recently and said there are no red lines. There are no red lines, okay? While simultaneously pretending as if Israel already is following in accordance with international law, which they absolutely aren't. But they say throughout the document, there are also broader critiques of U.S. policy in the Middle East and what authors call a failure to advance a viable path to a two-state solution in the conflict between Israel and Palestinians, which Biden said that he supports. Okay, so I mean, this is another thing here, and I want to show you guys this, okay? Let's see if we can find it here. Here it is. Okay, so this was from the New Yorker. They did an interview here with one of the top leaders of the Israeli settler movement, right? And so basically, you should go and read this entire article here, but this was something that stood out to me and obviously to Walid Shahid. But I mean, it gives you a perspective in terms of what the mindset is of a lot of these Israeli settlers, and it also kind of blows up the prospect that there could ever be a two-state solution. The Benjamin Netanyahu government is not in favor of a two-state solution. That's why they're so aggressively expanding these settlements into the West Bank. The West Bank has been fractured into a million different enclaves to which you would never be able to establish some sort of a cohesive state for Palestinians there, who are then going to be disconnected from the Palestinians who are refugees in Gaza. And it doesn't logistically make much sense unless you want to basically remove like 500,000 illegal Israeli settlers who are some of the most violent and far-right people in the entire country of Israel from the West Bank. I mean, it's like, doesn't really make much sense to me just logistically at this point because Israel has made it impossible. But this excerpt with this interview here kind of puts that into light. They say in Israel, there's lots of support for settlements, and this is why there have been right-wing governments for so many years. The world, especially the US, thinks that there is an option for a Palestinian state, and if we continue to build communities, then we block the option for a Palestinian state. We want to close the option for a Palestinian state, and the world wants to leave the option open. It's a very simple thing to understand. Yeah, it is very simple to understand. Israel, and a lot of these settlers especially, do not want a two-state solution. That's why they're expanding these settlements, is because they want to continue with a slow-rolling ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians in order to displace them from their land and take it over. This is a settler colonial project as it has been since its inception, okay? And again, as I point out there, it's a really simple thing to understand here, and yet it seems like the United States has no interest in understanding that reality. We still want to like pretend as if, oh, we believe in this like dream world two-state solution and Israel's working desperately towards that. It's just the Palestinians, they're just not really a good partner for peace in this kind of a situation. I mean, it's just utter bullshit top to bottom. And so now I want to circle back around to some of the more insane statements that we have gotten recently from Israeli politicians. So before we get into that, obviously, in this State Department memo, they allege that Joe Biden is complicit in genocide in Gaza. Okay, so this word gets thrown around a lot. Let's make it explicitly clear. Let's look at the United Nations on the Convention on Genocide Prevention. Okay, so here they have it. The definition: the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, Article 2. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Okay, so any of these following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part any national, ethnic, racial, religious group. Okay, A, killing members of the group. Yes. Causing serious bodily mental harm to the members of the group. Yes. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. This shit is undisputable. This is not even an argument at this point. Yes, if you actually look at the definition according to the United Nations, as feckless as it can be, because the United States doesn't allow for actual accountability at the International Criminal Court or through the UN for the country of Israel, but if you just look at the fucking definition here, I mean, already we're 3 for 3. This is not complicated. I mean, it very clearly says here, genocide means any of the following acts. We're already 3 for 3 here. And so just to give you a perspective on some of the recent statements of genocidal intent from some of these top Israeli politicians, there was a good compilation that was put together here, I think, by Katie Halpert, okay, who is Jewish herself, just as a reminder, on some of the absolutely insane statements made recently, and then we'll touch on a few others here, and then I'll wrap up the video. But let's hear from big man Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, the Israeli Prime Minister himself, and then we're also going to hear from Isaac Herzog, the President of Israel, Yoav Gallant, the Defense Minister of Israel, so on and so forth. Oh, let me slow this down a little bit. You guys are not on the same time as me. There we go. All right, so let's pause on this, right? This is from the president or the prime minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he quoted a verse, and it says, "Now go and smite Amalek, utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass." This is the Bible verse that he quoted in front of the entire fucking world. Okay, if this is not intent to kill innocent men, women, and children without regard for civilians versus combatant, lives, then I don't know what is. I mean, he's very explicitly outlaying it here for everybody.
It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved is absolutely not true.
אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
Very puzzled by the constant concern which the world is showing for the Palestinian people and is actually showing for these horrible, inhuman animals who have done the worst atrocities that this century has seen.
עזה לא תחזור להיות מה שהייתה, וחמאס לא יהיה. חסל את הכל.
مع هيك وحوش بشرية رايحين يتعامل كيف لازم. إسرائيل فرضت إغلاق كامل على غزة.
هناك إسرائيليون وصفوا الفلسطينيين في غزة وصفوهم بأنهم حيوانات بل أقل من حيوانات.
أنا لا أسويهم بالحيوانات لأن هذا تحقير للحيوانات.
هذا رأيك دكتور مردخاي؟
نعم هذا رأيي.
תכסחו אותם כמה שיותר, שלא להשאיר מהם זכר. שלא הם, לא אמא שלהם, לא הילדה שלהם, לא התינוקות שלהם. אסור להם לחיות לחיות האלה. אתה יש לך שכן ערבי, אתה לא תחכה שהוא יבוא אליך הביתה. תיכנס אליו הביתה ותירה.
תראה, לצורך לא, אתה חושב שאנחנו יכולים להרוג מאות אלפי פלסטינים ברצועת עזה, והדבר הזה יעבור? תראה, עכשיו בתקשורת הזרה יוצאת הודעה בשם ישראל שמיליון פלסטינים כבר ירדו מדרום הרצועה דרומה, וכל מי שנשאר שם נחשב כמחבל.
תשמיד את עזה עכשיו, עכשיו. עזה הופכת לדרזדן, כן.
All right, so you get the message there. I mean, it's as explicit as it could possibly be. And these aren't just like some random people you found out on the streets or something. This is the president of Israel, the prime minister of Israel, the head of defense within Israel, politicians within Israel, members of Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition within Israel. I mean, all of them just admitting, yeah, the goal is to engage in basically a nuclear destruction, if that's what it comes to, of Gaza, to flatten it entirely, okay, to not spare innocent men, women, and children, because there are no innocent men, women, and children. They're all animals, okay? They're all less than animals, according to some of these guys. I mean, you could not make this more explicit, right? And so this is a good video for anybody who's doubting, oh, Israel would never try to kill innocent civilians. Look at what they're saying. I mean, it's, I know it's easy to get confused sometimes for people if you just watch CNN or Fox News or something and you listen to American politicians, okay, and like waxing poetic about following in accordance with international law. Look at what the Israeli politicians are saying and tell me that this is not genocidal intent. If that wasn't enough to convince you, we also had this guy, Itamar Ben-Gvir, a 8 times charged and convicted criminal with inside Israel, including incitement of racism and, participating in helping to aid and abet terrorist activities inside Israel, a guy who was so extreme within this country that he was not allowed to be in the IDF. Think about that. Somebody who is so extreme, so far right, so racist, that he is not allowed in the Israeli Defense Forces. That's a whole different level. And he's now, because of this far-right coalition that Benjamin Netanyahu has put together, he's the head of internal national security for Israel. And here's what he said. To be clear, when we say that Hamas should be destroyed, it also means those who celebrate, those who support, and those who hand out candy. They're all terrorists, and they should all be destroyed. So in his mind, there's no distinguishing. Okay, let's be real about it. There's no distinguishing between a Hamas militant and somebody who lives in Gaza. It's all the same to him. Okay, we also had this. This was from Avi Dechter, Israel's Minister for Agriculture and the former head of Shin Bet, okay, a security agency inside Israel. He said, "We are now actually rolling out the Gaza Nakba." What else do you need? What else do you need to prove to the International Criminal Court that they have genocidal intent and are engaging in an ongoing genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza and a slow-rolling ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in the West Bank as well? But when he uses this language, he chose that language, Gaza Nakba, he's referring back to 1948 during the original Nakba, okay? Which, by the way, I mean, this was a period where over 700,000 Palestinians were removed from their land by force, by terror, and all of the rest of that. Many of the people who were living in Gaza were either directly expelled from their lands in 1948 during the first Nakba, or they're descendants of those who were expelled from their lands during the first Nakba. So a lot of these people are already refugees inside Gaza from the first Nakba, and now they're saying, we're going to do Nakba 2.0. So when they say that, what they mean is ethnic cleansing. They mean genocide. They mean we're going to push these Palestinians in Gaza completely out of the way. And we are going to conquer this, we're going to occupy this land, and probably into the future you're going to annex it, and you're going to try to take over this and create settlements there as well. I mean, this is what they're saying. It's unambiguous. The language, the rhetoric, the actions could not be clearer. Okay, you have to be in full-throated denial to not understand this. Another war crime that we have seen perpetuated multiple times already is the killing of numerous journalists inside Gaza. I just had another update here just this morning. Israel just murdered another Palestinian journalist, this guy Ahmad Fatima. Israel has now killed 49 journalists in Gaza in 37 days. This has already been the deadliest, month-long conflict for journalists, for UN members, for children in any recent conflict in modern history. Okay, this is unprecedented shit here. And then we also had this announcement. Israel's internal security agency announced that they will eliminate, kill, assassinate all participants of the October 7th massacre. The photojournalists, which they put in quotes here, who took part in the recording of the assault will be added to that list. Okay, they're outright saying, we are going to assassinate journalists who were on the ground to document what happened on October 7th. Not journalists who killed Israeli citizens. That's not what they're talking about there. People who were there filming what happened. Actual journalists who were documenting what happened on that day so that we could all get a perspective on what happened on that day. They're going to target and assassinate them. So, I mean, listen, I'm glad that there are some reasonable people within the State Department who are willing and able to use these channels of dissent in order to bring forward this kind of a messaging to the Joe Biden administration. I am glad. One of the only things that gives me hope right now in a moment like this, for the thousands, millions of people who have taken to the streets, who have engaged in direct action. I've seen numerous different protests where people have been blocking the ships that are delivering weapons to Israel. I've seen this in Australia. I've seen this in the United States. I've seen this in Berlin. I've seen this all over the place where they are workers and protesters are going out and blocking the shipments to Israel. That has been uplifting. That has been promising. And, I commend anybody who's participating in that kind of direct action. And it's also somewhat of a good sign that you do have people within the State Department, again, who are willing to come out and say this. Now, will Joe Biden listen to this? I don't know. I mean, you can definitely see signs, even the fact that they have to call for a humanitarian pause, even though that's bullshit, even, the fact that they have to come out and say and try to distance themselves from Israel's actions, that shows that some of this pressure is hitting at home. And I guess that the best that we can hope for at this point is that Biden wakes the fuck up and recognizes what's going on and recognizes that this is not only to call this a moral stain on his record would be the understatement of a century. I mean, this man now has blood on his hands to an unimaginable degree, but I hope that he also wakes up to realize this isn't even politically beneficial to you. Okay, this is going to destroy your 2024 chances if that's what you fucking want to prioritize. And it's also, again, the moral ambiguity of this, it's completely unimpeachable. Okay, this is a very easy thing to understand. As difficult as many people want to make it out to be, it's a very easy thing to understand, and this shit needs to stop immediately.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying